You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And this is Mother's Day. Fitting because last Tuesday the United States Supreme Court decided that every American woman must be a mother. The forced pregnancy ruling that was leaked from the United States Supreme Court bench, written by Justice Samuel Alito, is on the one hand not at all surprising in that we were expecting it, but on the other hand is an utter astonishment because of its complete gall, its audacity, and its being an atrocity. I and others far more learned in law than I am have already and will again in future make clear why the haphazard and erroneous reasoning cited by Alito in his draft is egregiously wrong, biased, and in deliberate contradiction to the Constitution and to jurisprudence itself. And that's not even beginning to mention the death knell effect this ruling will have on American women, more than half the population of the country, or its blatant ignoring of the reality that 54% of this country's population, in a 2-to-1 margin, male as well as female, Republican as well as Democrat, believes that Roe v. Wade should have been upheld, and almost 60% believes affirmatively in a woman's total right to her own reproductive freedom. This reminds me of William Faulkner's great line from his novel Requiem for a Nun. The past is never dead. It's not even past. Indeed. So we find ourselves, almost 50 years after the Supreme Court declared Roe v. Wade a constitutional right and the law of the land, refighting this issue from the ground up. So, this will not be the usual episode of Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan, although there will be a Fighting Words segment at the end. Instead, we're going to bring you, for virtually the entire episode, an in-depth conversation with a feminist leader who is an activist, an educator, and a member of the fastest-growing ethnic group in the United States, the Hispanic or Latinx community. Cherríe Moraga is a Chicana, a lesbian feminist, a mother, and a fine and prolific writer, producing plays, nonfiction books, feminist theory and queer theory, and Chicana cultural theory, as well as poetry, essays, and memoir. And I'm proud to say she's a friend. Cherríe and I had planned this conversation before the court's draft decision was leaked, and thoughtfully she considerately gave me the option of canceling or postponing her as a guest if I was so flattened with despair, or if I might wish to host an abortion expert as a guest in her place. Certainly, this podcast plans more abortion experts to address the court's decision this season and next and however long it damn takes. But particularly for this episode, so soon after the leak, I would actually prefer the voice of an artist, especially one who's an activist as well. And since we're also going to discuss, at least briefly, her current work in writing new sections and prefaces to her earlier, now classic works on women of color in the feminist movement, works being reissued because they're still fresh and timely, works both deeply personal and historically invaluable, one might very well say that Faulkner's line, "The past is never past," pertains to that as well. A few words about Cherríe before the first break. She was last on this program discussing her recent powerful memoir, Native Country of the Heart. Her plays include The Hungry Woman and Digging Up the Dirt. Her multiple award-winning books include A Chicana Codex of Changing Consciousness, Loving in the War Years, and the great classic, This Bridge Called My Back, writings by radical women of color, which she co-edited with Gloria Anzaldúa, and which has just been reissued in its 40th anniversary edition. Moraga is also a founding member of the social justice activist group La Red Chicana Indígena, which is an organization of Chicanas fighting for education, culture rights, and indigenous rights, and she is deeply active with Las Maestras, Center for Chicana Indigenous Thought, Art, and Social Practice at UC Santa Barbara, California. So here is where we'll take our first break, and I'll return in just a moment with Cherríe Moraga. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome, Cherríe. Welcome back to Women's Media Center Live. It's good to have you back.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy
Well,
to be here.
Well, we had planned to have this conversation, and we still will have it, by God. But what just came down the pike a day or so ago was, of course, the leaked draft of the court's opinion on Roe v. Wade. And we're all kind of not surprised in a very interesting way. I mean, you're not at all surprised in a sense, but astonished, yes. You know, I mean, if you could understand, because they seem to throw whatever they have at the wall and hope and wonder if it sticks. And if it sticks, hey, they just go on doing it and do more. And so this is a chance to talk about that and what we're going to do in the face of that, and what you think. I know you just came back from Texas. What you think the Chicana community and the Latina community in general is going to be doing about this and the way they're impacted on this and so forth. And so I would love to have that input.
Well, I feel, frankly, right now, I just so, I feel like, it's to a certain degree, my heart just stopped when I got the news. And, I woke up this morning and I was supposed to write this piece, sort of I received this an award, and I was supposed to write sort of a thank you piece, et cetera. And I was so full of rage, I had a really hard time saying thank you, and partly I think because I have been, and I mentioned this to you earlier, I had, kind of just sort of reeling from a trip that I took to Huntsville, Texas, to with some really wonderful people there at the State University. And so Huntsville, people don't always know where that is, but it's about an hour from Houston.
I do know.
From Houston, and yet, but it's like it's an hour from Houston, but it's like 75 years away. I think going the other direction. Yeah, but that partly what I learned there, was that there is this. It's the site where all the capital punishment for the state takes place.
Yeah.
And I was staying in a hotel room that was literally around the corner from this like block-sized wall that holds in the execution chambers. And what I found out is the day of my arrival was the day that this woman, Latina, Chicana, Tejana, Marisa Lucio, they had just granted a stay of execution for her.
Oh, yes.
She was.
She supposedly was the woman who supposedly murdered her children or something like that.
She was supposedly murdered her 2-year-old daughter by throwing her down the stairs. Mm-hmm. And apparently she did not die at that moment, but a couple of days later, from those injuries, she died. Mm-hmm. And so they had, they convicted her, and she's the only Latina in the history of Texas that has ever been on death row. Huh. And this happened, many years ago. And so she was due to be executed, and they finally, gave her a stay. And that was the day before. I mean, it was the day I got the stay occurred, because the next day she was supposed to be there executed.
Wow.
And the proximity of it just kind of, blew my mind. And for one thing, I didn't have to hear anything except that she was a mother who killed her child. And I say, no, when a mother kills her child, for whatever, even whether she did or she didn't do it, all I had to hear was the mother killed her child. It is never premeditated.
That's right.
It is never premeditated.
That's right.
And then who are the patriarchs that think they know what that is?
Yeah.
So that was my first set of feeling, right? That was my first set of feeling, and I'm going, okay, well, good. They stayed the execution. That's great, and. But it stayed with me, of course. And then during this time when I was there at the State University, I find out they have, and the vast majority of the surrounding community is all brown and black folks, in that community.
Mm-hmm.
And they have no ethnic studies programs. They have no LGBTQ programs. They have basically no cultural centers, all the ones that we see in so many of our other universities.
Oh.
So really what I felt like is that I had sort of walked into like
yesterday
in a perverse way, like kind of like a third world country. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying that in quotation marks because of also knowing that third world may have much more progressive policy than some of this, right? But it was like twisted, because it was like I look around, there's all these white people.
Yeah.
I said, how could I feel like I'm in this so-called underdeveloped country, in a place that has all these white people around? And I said, I'm losing my mind. It's always like I was losing my mind.
Well,
so this was one thing. So in the time that I was going there, and I felt like this really is what it is to feel on a certain level, that you are a foreigner in your so-called country, right?
Yeah.
And I had this sort of, we have talked, you and I have talked a little bit about sort of understanding also like a Chicana perspective,
mm-hmm.
particularly for those of us that have been here, our people have been here from the beginning of time.
Yeah.
But there is a perspective that's also indigenous. And my feeling was underneath you could get this glimpse that underneath all of this colonization, was still this land that had a memory. And that it's just this another level of this constant level of neocolonization, and, I'm almost a little bit speechless with that really the effect that it had on me and the people I talked to, because the people I talked to were beautiful teachers. I mean, it's incredible teachers and caring people, and the students were great and starving. They were starving, and I felt like it's just, there is a way in which, and you and I live on both coasts, and there really, really is this way in which we forget that there are just, even though we hear it in the news, but on a visceral level, to experience swaths of this whole nation state, where people are living in the most repressed environment in terms of their ability to express themselves as people of color, as queer people, all of it. So all that's to say is that the next morning, so then, I think we talked a couple of days ago, and so this morning, it's like then I went to bed last night with all of this information. It was really, really hard to sleep into finding out about this, what you just said too, is that we could have anticipated exactly what this, the Supreme Court was going to do. It was just strategic, The
Absolutely.
One thing that the Trump could do strategically was ruin it for everybody else, with
this is his legacy.
This court,
That's right.
It's his legacy. So when that happened, though, it came up to me all over again, this feeling of like why I became a feminist in the first place, right? Yeah. And the fundamental part was that I knew that my body was despised.
Yeah.
I knew it.
Yeah.
It's just like, and it has a white patriarchal twist. It has a patriarchal twist, and it has all these versions of it. But fundamentally, it is like what happened again today is that I was reminded. It's like there is complete, in Spanish, you say desprecio, for the female, for the female.
And possession.
That's the point, right?
Precisely.
That's how it works.
Exactly.
That's how it works, It works by control. It works by ownership. And the thing that we, when you were talking also about, earlier we had talked about indigenous perspectives, the one thing I really have learned from that, is that you can't own nature, you can't own, property, you can't own women, and you can't own land. I mean, those are antithetical to really, really, deeply, deeply restorative justices.
And those are the things that keep life really alive. Those are the
exactly.
I mean, those are the life-giving properties. Those are the and so the hysteria, and I do use the word advisedly in this case, to the patriarchal hysteria to own them, to possess them, to squelch them, to contain them is out of control totally, and has been for quite a while now. It's so interesting because it really is. Recently we had a surrogacy battle, which we lost in New York State. Commercial surrogacy. I'm not talking about altruistic surrogacy when a sister of a woman who can't conceive says blah, blah, blah. But this is commercial surrogacy, and we fought it as a feminist issue because we think it takes advantage, of poor women who will sell their bodies for pregnancy, etc. All which ought to be pretty obvious. And we lost this battle. We'll go back for another round, but we lost that battle. But I was thinking, I mean, you have children. You don't have children when we don't want you to. You don't. When you don't want to have children, we want you to have them. And when we want you to have them for specific purposes like surrogacy, then we allow you to have them. I mean, there is a complete, no matter which way, and certainly where sex and anything approaching sexual joy is concerned, whoa, we are really in control there. So there's no aspect of the body, the female body, that isn't controllable and isn't desired to be controllable. And then this is, of course, compounded when it is a body of color, when it is a body that is disabled, when it is a body that is, less than at full patriarchal approval strength. How shall I don't know how else to put that.
I mean, I think too, the thing is that it is, the strategy of it is that really the, when I say this, that, and I hate to talk rhetorically, but sort of like under capitalist patriarchy, this is a perfect thing, right? In the sense that what happens is that they want to make sure, particularly that women of color continue to have babies. That's exactly what they want.
That's right.
Yeah, and that way they will, us will remain a poverty class, right?
That's right.
And the more, and therefore, so then the more, all of the everything that comes in society with poverty, right, are the ways then they can point the finger to, this abject set of people that have, that are ruining it for America. And then what that does is that allows then for the white working class to then to hang on to the one little tiny little thread that they have a privilege,
That's right. That's right.
So you can't have a ruling class, without the poor, right?
No, of course you can't. But it
works.
They've always done this. They've always been selective in that you're this and you're that and you're not and you're that. Yes. The very first legislation Hitler ever passed was an abortion law. But it was abortion being illegal only for, are you ready for this one? Aryan women. You see?
Yes, of course.
because we wanted them. They were bright and blue-eyed and blonde, and we want them to. So they should not be able to abort. However, those gypsies, those Jews, those brown people, those other, they should get rid of their. And in fact, we'll help them get rid of their babies. So it adjusts. It is amazingly dynamic.
Yes, it does. You're right.
It's dynamic.
Absolutely.
And they adjust it according to the circumstances it requires. It makes it's just sickening. It's absolutely sickening.
And all of it is under all of this is sort of like under the pretext of life and the pretext of preserving life and the pretext of Christian values
and children and family.
And yet they don't give a damn about the families.
No.
Give a damn about the families. This is what's just like. I don't know. I mean, it's a little. I know you feel as I do. I feel a little speechless in all of this, right? Because it's also because we have been saying the same thing, for 40, 50 years.
I know.
And it's like there isn't. I mean, I heard Barbara Lee the other night last night on I guess it was on MSNBC or something, talking about her own abortion.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing her, as this. Like she's because I lived in the Bay Area for so many years. So she's my senator. She's my California senator, but also congresswoman all her way up. She's in my district, and I just admire her greatly. Always, for her courage around the war in Iraq, the invasion, in Iraq, and all of this. And I see her, and and so she's a woman like all of us. She's fully grown. She's now an elder. In our community.
Yeah.
And for her to say, it's like you see, like I don't know why it moved me so much because she was saying, she had to say that she was 16 years old, go to Mexico, and has it. And to her mother goes, I'm going to go with you. This is what we can do. Her mother helped her out, right?
Oh.
So why does a mother help out your daughter, Like there's a creepy thing, like, okay, I don't want, it's embarrassing or it's shameful and all the Christian stuff. But the other part of it is, in Spanish, Mika, my daughter, right?
Yeah.
I want you to be okay.
Of course.
You have a right. You're too young. I want you to be okay.
Of course.
And somehow, and white people with means are doing that all the time. And after this abortion, if it's all, when it all passes and everything, even those ruling class white men that say that they are so much, like against it, they're taking their daughters, they're taking whatever to cover their own lives.
Of course they are.
Their property.
Of course.
So what moves me about Barbara is just that having, and I see these young women, with their black T-shirts on that say, I've had an abortion.
Yeah.
Right. These protesting women, and it takes courage because you don't know they're gonna walk down the street, someone's gonna shoot them in the head because they're protecting life. Right.
That's right.
And those are the killers. Those are the killers with the black T-shirts, and then the pro-abortion people will, make sure they get they're flattened. Yeah. So the contradictions are like, it's almost, I don't know how like dumbed down we can get not to see these contradictions. And to also know, that historically, long before all of this stuff, long before, the industrial world, long before all of this, is that women always knew, when to have babies and how to have babies.
Oh,
when
absolutely.
They had the right to control it.
Absolutely.
They took the herb, they did their thing.
Of course.
It was natural. Was natural.
Of course it was.
And so who is this, God that is now determining for us, that this is not natural behavior.
I mean, a tree.
And that we have a right we have the right to give that spirit back. If you're spiritual, then what you do is they can say, this, and
of course you do. Of course you do.
That you have the right. You have the right to give that spirit back.
The moral right. Interestingly enough.
Exactly. Exactly.
A tree that drops whatever. I mean, acorns. Let's say, one tree drops millions of acorns. Do you think that the tree thinks to itself, oh, wow, geez, I better not do away with any one of these acorns? Of course, these acorns from one tree could replenish 17 forests. But that is the abundance, the generosity, the overdoing of nature, which is filled with redundancy and with generosity, as I say. And women, particularly indigenous women, have always known that and listened to it, and followed what their mamas taught them, So the only difference, and we also know that for example, in those Latin American countries where Colombia has abortion, unlike us, but we know that those countries where it is still illegal, or there's a concordat with the Catholic Church, that abortions take place at the same rate that they do in places where pregnancy termination is perfectly legal. Now, this tells us something, because the only difference is that in the one, women die, and in the other, women live,
Yeah. Well, I mean, as of last year, abortion, is no longer a crime in Mexico. I mean, I practically fell off my chair.
Yeah.
It's like, I go, well, there you go. And I'm telling you, because those sisters, I mean, that just history of activism in Mexico about violence against women and reproductive rights and everything, all through Central America too, has been phenomenal.
Yeah, it's
phenomenal,
been incredible.
You know?
Incredible. And I remember
so
when the first encuentros, the encuentros were beginning about 15, 20 years ago. And they were so young, and they were so full of spit and fire. And look what they've done. My God, look what they've done.
Yeah.
So they're the model
I know.
now.
They are. No, I know, and a great risk to their lives.
Huge, particularly in Central America. I mean, it's
I'm thinking of Berta Saqueres,
that's right.
Saqueres, that the activism around the rights of water, the rights of land. I mean, all of it's connected, and I think that people always it's so weird how those beliefs are very profound, yet they can get so trivialized, to say that everything is interrelated, that there is and when you talk about nature, I mean, and we are bodies.
Yeah.
We are bodies are nature.
Yeah, we're a part of it. We're a part of nature.
So
yeah.
We're part of it. Yeah. Anyway, so this is I don't know.
Anyway, we'll do what we can. As always, we'll pick ourselves up. We'll go eyes on the prize. We'll go back to the battle. We're introducing new legislation already in Congress. We'll do it through the mail. We'll do it through. I mean, the problem, of course, is that this is the grounds on which this is being done affect everything, because it comes in under privacy. So this also will affect everything from contraception, to to mail order pills, because more than half the terminations that are done in the States now are done by medication. It will also affect gay rights. It will affect gay marriage. It will affect like cases like the famous Lovings case, where people crossed state lines because they were not permitted to, quote, miscegenate. That's right.
Yeah.
So this is the first brick thrown through a very, very large window, and we got to turn it on. My only hope is that it will so galvanize people who didn't believe us, they thought we were a crying wolf, that maybe it will get everybody out, not only on the streets, but in the polls. I just, this fall, right now, never mind waiting for 2024. That's my hope.
Yeah. I know. That's always one's hope,
Yeah.
But that's what I thought about Trump, right? I go, oh, good. Like, we're going to just turn this all into radicals. I mean, it's like that was the hope, right? It was so oppressive, so ridiculous. I mean, is that, and you thought everybody's going to be this response is going to be phenomenal. You know?
But I think maybe now this is a different. I mean, I think that this is set up. Of course, I could go down to my death saying, wait, but I think, ka-chunk, but I think that this is a turning point that we have not been at before, which is self-descriptive. At least I hope so. I mean,
well, particularly because it impacts, it really specifically impacts, half of the nation states. Women, and it's
and everybody, and it's not just red states.
Well, of course it does. Yes. And I don't know. I'm thinking I was wondering, it's the question occurred to me that in the meantime, what happens? Like, I thought to myself, what the people will have to travel, and in order to get abortions. And I think, okay, so maybe what you need to be doing is, collecting all this money for travel. Among those communities you're thinking about.
But that's already happening. Cherríe. What is interesting is that I had a show recently on about the revitalized use of the Carmen cannula, the things that the feminist women's health centers were using 40 years ago for menstrual extraction kits, as well as the medications through the mail, as well as the online ordering of medications. I mean, I think there's going to be massive massive civil disobedience. You just, I mean,
Yes.
women will
Right.
not go along with this. They just won't. Well, listen, while we're rolling up our sleeves for this yet another time, I'd get so bored doing the same thing again and again, but the bastards on the far right send us back to doing it again and again and again. However, listeners, Cherríe and I had planned this conversation, and we will do many more of them, but we had hoped to talk about, and I still want to talk about, her wonderful books, which are being reissued. And I think this is real important, and I would like to... Can we spend some time, please, talking about this now, Cherríe?
Okay. I was doing it. I was doing it rather begrudgingly because I was so upset about what just had come.
I know.
Come to pass. But I appreciate your insistence.
Well,
your delicate insistence.
Well, I think I think that in terms of lasting, the pen is mightier than the sword, and I think that what you've set down is really some remarkable work. Not only are you a beautiful writer, and I'm not saying this lightly because I can be really cranky when people are not beautiful writers, but this bridge called My Back was reissued last year in a, believe it or not, 40th anniversary edition. Can't believe it. And it is as good and, in fact, better than ever before. I've just reread it, and it's amazing. I'll come back to that. But then in 2022, what's coming out this year is Waiting in Wings, which is Portrait of a Queer Motherhood. That's the 25th year anniversary issue. And coming out next year is Loving in the War Years and Selected Writings from 78 to 98. And then there's also The Last Generation. You're very prolific, but your prolificness, your prolifictude, I don't know really how you noun that, has not affected your quality. Your quantity, that's what I'm after, hasn't affected your quality. It's just, you're really...
thank you.
And I was looking at the... where is it now? I was looking at the new introduction. No, I look at Portrait of an Artist, the piece that you sent me that is going to be... And there's such wonderful, I've got little marginal sentences marked throughout. It's like, the writing in retrospect seems marked by the unseen, by the failed to mention, but known by heart. And this wonderful thing about your mother, actually your grandmother, your mother's mother, a 96-year-old twig of tenacity splintering into the embrace de la muerte. Oh, really, So you're a poet, obviously, as well as a prose writer, and it shows in the prose. And I would love to hear, because I've done this once or twice, and I'm doing it again on other books, how you approach and what you think about reissuing books that have come out 30, 40, whatever years earlier, and what you and how you find that they, in many deplorable cases, are still all too timely, but also how they hold up, where they don't hold up, where you need to punch them up a bit, when you don't need to do that, how you correct them if they've been, off kilter, or any of that. Those sort of writerly things. I would love to know your thoughts on that.
Well, that's huge, right? That's a lot to talk about. I think that the first thing I'll talk about is the thing that you said about kind of, unfortunately, they're still so relevant. Really meaning that that times haven't changed. Just how we opened the conversation, that times have not changed. In that sense, but in terms of always being sort of, it's called Loving in the War Years. That first solo book of mine, and it still is that, of course, always the war years. And I called it Loving in the War Years because I was, I loved in an embattled way because I was an out, Chicana lesbian.
Right.
And so those sort of themes, they stay with you, and we have these moments of reprieve, I think, and then you're back to battling again.
Yeah.
But the thing that I learned about, Bridge in particular, and that's what really sort of surprised me, because actually Bridge was my first book, that I co-edited with Golian Saldua. And we were these I always call them these two, I say little because they're both short, these two little Chicana, sort of nobodies. I mean, we hadn't really published much or anything, but we had this vision, and we were able to get
did you ever?
really, really significant support from some really serious, Black feminists, like Tony K. Bombara, Barbara Smith, Audre Lorde, and Pat Parker really put the book, to their credit, to believe in us, to put this book, into circulation and get a readership that now has at least survived 40 years. Not consistently all the way through. There were periods after Gloria's death I really had no desire to bring it back, and then finally we did bring it back again through SUNY Press, and after it had been published by a woman, Kitchen Table Woman Press for many years. But the point being is that I'd never really taught it, and then last fall, because it was going to be the 40th anniversary, I taught this like 200-person lecture. I teach at UC Santa Barbara, and there's 200 young people, 18 to 22 in this place, in this room, and we're going through the whole book. And I'd never quite taught it with really the depth and then sort of the complexity of how now I understand it 40 years later. And to these students, it was absolutely new. And it was interesting because all of them, many of them, because they're taking this class, they could it rolled off to the tongue, the word intersectionality this and intersectionality that. And yet it was really weird, because I felt like on a certain level, it was the first time they were understanding it on a sort of visceral level,
Of course.
How those things came together viscerally, and that they love the Combahee River Collective, of course, that statement, and all the same issues were there, and they said to me, "We don't write like this anymore." I said, "What?" They go, "No, we don't write like this anymore. You're not allowed to write like that anymore." And they were talking about people writing, like blood, sweat, tears, and bones, with theory in the flesh. That's what's theory in the flesh. So that really, really impacted me a lot, and kind of, it made me kind of, so then we had, I had basically really reworked that book in 2015 with, footnotes, etc. But then it came out again, now last year with a new preface, and it's, it's going to keep going, which I've been very pleased with in terms of its distribution. I think they keep using it. But I think it helped me, that experience with those students helped me to kind of look at, these other these other updates for, these kind of new additions for my other books. And those books have really are from like the 1983 going up through 1999. Yeah. And so in those years, so in looking at them, partly the first thing was, and this is kind of funny to me because it really isn't about me. It really is so not about me. That's why I can laugh about it. Is that sometimes I'm being like, go, us girl, go for you, girl, man. So I'm going because of the courage, but it's not me. It's like I'm grown. I'm cooked, Yeah. What I realized is that I've had so many relationships with young people after so many years of teaching, and I've seen so many young people, so much courage,
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at them, I'm remembering this stuff, and a lot of the stuff, the first stuff, or the Chicana stuff, or lesbian stuff, that was like written in the late 70s. And there was nothing for us to read, nothing,
No. Yeah.
So
Bridge was the first. Bridge started.
Yeah. But so I forgive myself some of the, not the kind of like you said, some view, you played those lines from from the preface of Wedding in the Wings, which is now brand new. So it's my newest writing that I just shared with you. And I appreciate the things you always notice in the writing. It's kind of my favorite stuff too, but Loving and the Warriors is not quite as, it's not as smooth, it's not as
it's written with spit and
exactly.
It's written with spit and with blood and with clotted blood and with rage and with bile.
Yeah.
But there is a process. I don't want to call it refinement because that sounds like drawing rooms in England in the
Right.
19th
Yeah.
century.
Yeah. Thank you.
But there is a process which now, because you're older, I think happens automatically. Maybe it was striven for when you were younger. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's a process through
Yeah.
which it becomes honed, and therefore all the more powerful. That doesn't strip it of its power, it seems to me, but it
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
it
Yeah, yeah.
enhances and strengthens the native power that is in those words. I mean, listen, there is a moment in Bridge, and I don't know whether I knew this the first time around and forgot it because my memory went south with my estrogen. But it is something to the effect. I think it's in La Guerra. It isn't difference that the oppressor fears so much as similarity. And I have somewhere, I think it's in Anatomy of Freedom, the lines, words to this effect. Difference is not it is not difference that's feared. It is that we are the same, deep in the heart, and that's what is most threatening. Because if there is the same, then the oppression is being done to a part of yourself, to
Exactly.
it's like Jefferson with his slave family, because it was his own children. I mean, this is the story of an American family. So it is being done on the most intimate and personal of levels, and that's where the horror lies, and that's where the fear lies as well of the oppressor. And I just, I love these to have these books back and living and with new introductions is such a treasure. I certainly can imagine why the students are going bananas with glee. But even for older folks, this is good stuff. Talk about Waiting in Wings, the portrait of a queer motherhood, because that's a beautiful, beautiful and incredible book.
Thank you. Well, that's gonna come out in the fall, and it is. I was actually kind of surprised when I was looking. I was trying to find some little descriptions of it, and I saw that it was actually being pre-ordered already in some sites, which is nice to hear. But that book was it's interesting because you did bring me on, a couple of years ago when Native Country of the Heart had come out, which is a memoir. And
that's right.
I really enjoyed that conversation with you. And what I've always thought about on a certain level is that Waiting in the Wings and Native Country were sort of bookends. Because
of course,
Native Country of the Heart was about my mother's passing, was partly about her passing. It was a portrait of our relationship. And the other, and Waiting in the Wings is really a portrait of my first, the first becoming pregnant, and then the first
having a mother, and being a mother.
And being a mother, right. But it's it ends up being a book that the other similarity is that it ends up being a book that is a meditation also on death and dying.
Yes.
And because through him, my son, he's quite mature. He's 28 years old now. And he actually wrote an afterword for the book, which is, it was kind of, had come, my agent is a wonderful man. He said, what do you think about him saying something, And I go, wow. And it was really good. It was good for our relationship. It was good for him and me. But the thing is that
it's beautiful, by the way.
Very, very premature.
It's beautiful.
Very premature. What
his part of the after that you sent me in manuscript. I really loved it. I thought it was lovely.
Good. Yeah, I loved it too. But but the point was is that he was born very, very premature and 2.5 pounds, and because of that, then I really had to confront the facts over a 3.5 month period that he may not live.
Yeah.
And so that proximity to birth and death, it's in front of you, and it changed my life forever.
They're the mysteries, aren't they? They're the mysteries.
Yeah.
Birth, death.
They're the mysteries, and then. Yeah. So, and the other one is, the other books about my mother's passing. So the memoir, so I write a lot of, I write a lot of personal essays, reflective piece, all this kind of stuff, and poetry. But to write the memoir, and you know this, I mean, to have this extended telling, you know, is very, very different, you know, because it both goes wide and it goes really intimate, and then it goes out again and really intimate, you know, back and forth.
Exactly.
So it's a pleasure when it's working, and when it's not, it's really hard.
Oh, when it's not, it's a bloody nightmare. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Well,
but, so, you know, I feel it, you know, so looking back on some of those earlier works, like with Last Generation, so there's some pieces I'm not going to keep in there anymore, because I feel like they, you know, because also that sort of very few, most of it stays intact, but some kind of looking at things differently now in terms of like, that was already better said, I don't need to say it again, and, you know, things like that you know, but I appreciate what you're saying too about kind of the evolution of a writer, you know, if you've been doing it for so long, is that I think what's kind of you know, just what happens is that it is somewhat easier to get to what it is you need to say.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Because
I do.
You know it already. It's just this muscle, and you know how to get there.
I do.
And you don't despair as much because you've already looked at the blank page so many times, and you know you get through it. That's pretty good. It's good to know that.
Yes,
you know?
it is good. It is very, it is very helpful to know that. It's and you need to keep your audience in mind and also forget them at the same time, I think.
Exactly.
You know, because they're younger, so the tendency is to think, oh, I should explain that back in 1972 we didn't do, and some of that you do need to do for literal context, but no, you don't need to. People will pick up on it. People are smart. I mean, young ones in particular, and so I think you can afford to take risks that you didn't think you'd be able to take in a reissue of a book.
Yeah.
You know,
and I think it's also important. There's things that I could have changed because they're not timely necessarily. I mean, they're not like language has really changed a lot. You know.
Yes.
And in terms of, you know, sort of even the word intersectionality, like I was saying, and I really tried to kind of keep the integrity of that time, like about how people use language. I use the word lesbian. Very few people use the word lesbian now. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, I learned from I taught a great group of kids called the Drama Divas, and they were this, you know, queer group of kids of color and friends and stuff that I taught them. They were kids, you know, like 14 to like 21, and they just thought I was so like, oh, you're lesbian. We're all queer, you know. And so I've learned, you know, certain evolutions of language, you know, that I use strategically at different times in different places. But I wasn't going to change that, you know, even though it sounds sort of foreign to some of the younger readers. And I thought, this is good. This is good for them to see, like, that there's a history.
That's right, and that such words, such concepts, such actions were considered hair-raising at a certain point. I mean, my God, yeah. You know, to get people beat up, get people killed, get people, you know, and were horrific. And that now, so that otherwise they get completely taken for granted. You know, I mean, they lose, interestingly enough, they lose their power as language. And
it's an interesting,
you know,
project.
I don't know if did you ever read Toni Morrison's Nobel speech? Her Nobel Prize speech on language.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, because I think it's one of the most wonderful things ever written.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh God. It's just it's a short little speech, and it just takes your breath away, and it is about the power, the magic, and the luck that we have to be working with words. You know, it's like alchemical elements that we get to work with. So I think it's important to be as honest as possible, which you always are, and to keep that language where it's necessary, so that the kids learn how it was before they learn what it is. You know? Yeah,
I think that's well put. Yeah.
Oh God. Well, I could go on for a very long time about these books, but anyway, okay. So number one is this Bridge Called My Back. If you haven't read it, listeners, run, do not walk to your computer and order it. This is the 40th anniversary edition. It was edited by Cherríe Moraga and Gloria Anzaldúa, and it was the first book that opened the women's movement to the world and to women outside of white women, middle-class women, straight women. And it's a brilliant book. And that came out last year. Native Country of the Heart, a memoir, is now in paperback. As I tell you, she's really prolific. She gets her work done. And coming out this fall is Waiting in Wings, Portrait of a Queer Motherhood.
That was Haymarket Press is doing that.
Oh, right, Haymarket.
These two issues, yeah, new editions.
Okay,
yeah.
Is Haymarket. And Loving in the War Years and Selected Writings in 2023. And on and so forth. And so there's a whole there's so many goodies waiting for you to read, and that will get your blood pumping and get you out there in the streets demanding the change that you deserve. And you're going to need it this year. I think what we've done is devote the whole program basically to this conversation, and that, you know what, is just fine with me. If it's okay with you.
Good. Well, I'm glad. It's fine with me too. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. We have met each other very late in life, but
we did.
These conversations mean a great deal to me. So thank you.
Me too. We need to take a final break here, but I'll return immediately with some fighting words. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Human being's rights over her own body. Those are fighting words. The unelected, extremist, conservative majority on the Supreme Court, appointed by two presidents who both lost the popular vote, is about to overturn 50 years of precedent and end our right to terminate unwanted pregnancies. No time to waste. Here are some facts. A majority of Americans support abortion rights, but Republican-controlled legislatures in cleverly and heavily gerrymandered states do not. And it is those unbalanced, undemocratic governing bodies that are responsible for Mississippi's 15-week ban, for Texas's 6-week ban, and for bills that would restrict or ban abortions in at least 21 other states when Roe is officially overturned. As Jill Lepore writes in The New Yorker, quote, Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito is surprised that there is so little written about abortion in a 4,000-word document crafted by 55 men in 1787. As it happens, there is also nothing at all in that document, which sets out fundamental law, about pregnancy, uteruses, vaginas, fetuses, placentas, menstrual blood, breasts, or breast milk. There is nothing in that document about women at all. Most consequentially, there is nothing in that document, or in the circumstances under which it was written, that suggests its authors even imagined women as part of the political community, embraced by the phrase, "we the people." Period. Close quote. I would add that Alito also does not mention that American women have the highest maternal mortality rates in the developed industrialized world. that America is the only industrialized nation without mandated paid leave, that 16% of its children live in poverty, that it spends something like 2% of what some Scandinavian countries do on daycare per toddler. In other words, America cares passionately about life, but only in the fetal form. This is not about life. This is about birth. Alito argues that Roe was not, quote, deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition. What? As opposed, say, to the enslavement of African peoples, that was deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition. Oh, let's think about this nation's history and tradition. When Roe was decided, I, a married woman in the United States, needed my husband's permission to get a credit card, or a loan, or a checking account that wasn't joint, something that did not change until 1974. No state outlawed marital rape until 1975. No man was found liable for sexual harassment until 1977. Pregnancy was a fireable offense until 1978. Alito blithely fails to itemize forms of sex-based subjugation that persisted after Roe, many of which might be persuasively argued as, quote, deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition, close quote. Not to speak of attempted genocide of native peoples, interning of Asian peoples, bigotry against every immigrant group seeking refuge, etc., etc., ad nauseum. Deeply rooted indeed. And while we're on race, let's look at the profound impact racism has had on this Roe decision. Let's not forget all those young white males marching, chanting, "You will not replace us." All this not even below the surface paranoia about the glad fact that the United States will soon be no longer a majority white nation. Just how much poisonous effect do you think that has had, consciously or unconsciously, on this anti-abortion decision? Again, this isn't about life. This is about birth. Let's not forget to make the connections. This is Trump's legacy, and the transformed degradation of the Republican Party. Racism and religion. That noxious belief in kingdoms and kings instead of republics and democracies. Why is there no Republic of Heaven? If the good news is that religiosity in this otherwise hypocritically faith-saturated nation is declining, and it is, the bad news is that it isn't declining fast enough. So don't let them say you were crying wolf this time. Don't let them claim we should wait and see. We waited. We've seen. If they succeed in overturning Roe, there is every reason to believe they will move for a national outright ban on the procedure, as well as to reverse federal affirmative action rulings, rulings on same-sex marriage and gay rights, rulings on disability and on state gun control laws, and those even on contraception and on crossing state lines to marry someone of another race, and more. The works. We need all hands on deck this time, and every tactic and strategy imaginable. We need to end the filibuster, incendiary thought as that may be. We need more funds, many more, like the decades-old Lilith Fund in Texas, coordinating with abortion providers in neighboring states to pay for child care, lodgings, travel, and food on a poor patient's journey. We need to march in larger numbers than ever before, and we need to show up at the polls for pro-reproductive rights candidates. We need legislation advocating for a human rights framework for reproductive freedom, a strategy that has been effective in Ireland, in Mexico, and one that has inspired activism recently in Poland and in Argentina. We need our sisters across the world. This podcast will be on hiatus next week, and I will be off to the front lines, organizing. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag Fighting Words. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and now Instagram at The Robin Morgan, and you can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book of poems, Dark Matter, and my brand new novel, Parallax, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.